This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show. This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show.
YouTube, what is up? I'm your homeboy Josh, back at you with a review of the Coil Tank. The Coil Tank by ZPAL. Sent on over free for the purposes of review from the manufacturer. I also want to give a shout out and a big thank you to Darryl over at Quest for Vape. They contacted me on his recommendation. So Darryl, thank you so much for sending him my way, man. This tank is awesome. Really appreciate you asking him to send it my way. I've been enjoying it. Yeah. So, what's the big deal about this tank? It's a sub tank. You know I'm not that crazy about sub tanks in general, but this tank has something. It really does. I've got it turned up to 100 watts right now. Yeah, this tank is rated for anywhere from 50 watts on up to 200 watts, baby. 200 watts in a sub tank. I've got it sitting on my DNA 200, my Axis Vapes M17. I love this box. I fucking love this box. I've got a review coming up on this box very, very soon. It's a work of art. Yeah, that's at 200 watts. And it can keep up. I'm not necessarily taking really long pulls at it, mind you, but it can keep up at 200 watts. Chain vaping. Yeah. No shit. No shit. Come on in here. Let's take a look at this thing. What's up, YouTube? So today we're taking a look at the Coil Tank by ZPAL. It's a pretty interesting tank, if only in that it is advertised to go up to 200 watts. Yeah, its wattage range is anywhere from 50 to 200 watts. I mean, this sub-tank thing, you know, it's never really been my thing. I've never been big on the sub-tanks, really. I'm more of an RDA kind of guy, not even an RTA kind of guy, more of an RDA kind of guy. I like my little tiny drippers and all that. But I have to tell you, this tank has something. It really does. So inside the box, you've got your fully assembled Coil tank complete with a coil already installed, and you also get an extra coil as well. Now the coil is pretty much where the magic happens here. After all, this is a tank that goes from 50 watts to 200 watts. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty high. So to do that, it's got to have a pretty decent coil here. Let's take a look at it. It's big. It's a big friggin' coil, okay? This coil is ginormous. Ginormous by my standards anyway. I mean, I'm not huge on sub-tanks. I don't vape a whole lot of sub-tanks, but I know a big coil when I see one, and this is a really, really, really big coil. I mean, just look at the juice flow holes on this thing. The juice flow holes on this thing alone, I want to say each one of them are 2 millimeters. And it comes in like these sets of 4. You get 4 and 4, and then multiply that times 4. So, I mean, there's a lot of wicking holes here. Basically, those are each 2 millimeter wicking holes. There's 8 of them to a side, and there's 4 sets of them. So, I mean, you're looking at a total of 32 2 millimeter wicking holes here. Can seriously keep up with the juice, which is why this coil works so well. When I heard this tank could go up to 200 watts, I didn't really know what to believe. But with these wicking holes, the size that they are and the amount of them that there are, it's actually possible, I gotta say. I mean, I don't want to spoil this for you, but yeah, spoiler alert, it works. It goes to 200 watts, and it's amazing. These are 0.2 ohm coils made of 304 stainless steel. Looking at the coil itself, from what I can see here, it looks like it's a parallel wrapped vertical coil. So 2 coils here wrapped together. Looks like they might be spaced a little bit too. Now, I don't think it says anywhere on the package that this is made with organic Japanese cotton, but just looking at it, I'm pretty sure that it is. It looks like really good quality cotton. I can tell you that the flavor on this tank is actually very, very good. It's very natural flavor. So, I mean, that's stainless steel working with this high quality cotton that they're using. It works very, very well. It does not come with an extra glass, but I want to say that this tank is only $30. $30 for a tank that goes to 200 watts. That's pretty darn good, I gotta say. I'm impressed with that price point, especially considering the build quality. Everything here is very heavy. It's a very hefty tank. Seems to be very well made. It's a 5 milliliter capacity and it's a quartz glass tank. And you know, I kind of wish that it came with an extra, but at that price point, I don't blame them for not including it. As long as they make it available where I can buy an extra quartz glass tank, if I ever break it or lose it or anything happens to it, fine by me. So this is the top collar, as they call it in the manual. The top collar contains the fill holes, and it also secures down into the actual coil as well. Basically, there's a little section here that screws into the top of the coil. You can see that there's a lot of knurling over here. I really like how the knurling works. It's very easy to hold with your fingers and function with everything there. Now, the top collar also has an assembly that you screw on into here, basically just a lid to the fill control. And in that lid to the fill control, you also have your port for your drip tip. Now, the thing is that this port only houses the proprietary hole for the proprietary drip tips. You can't use your own drip tips here, which I got to give a big old thumbs down. I really, really, really wish there was the ability to use my own drip tips here. Now, looking at the drip tip, I really don't like it at all, okay? It is made of metal. It has an airflow control, which is very, very loose. I don't like the way that this functions because it'll open up on me without my doing anything. It just kind of flops around there. I mean, the vapor, you can get a nice, really warm vape out of this. I mean, it is a hot vape. You can get a hot vape without burning the coil at all, I mean, but it's a nice hot vape that you can get. But when that drip tip airflow control opens up on me, it's really cold. It's like this cold air mixing with the hot air, and it just feels kind of funky, and it's never what I'm going for. Maybe some people like that. I don't know. I don't like it. It kills the flavor a bit. It kills the heat, and I actually really, really like the heat that I get with this tank. The heat is what I really like the most about this tank. Even though it's metal, it doesn't get hot at all, and that's because it's really, really well insulated. Looking at the insulation on this tip, it's basically like there's two tips in here. There's like this Delrin plastic tip, and that's where it makes the connection with the tank. And that tip, it actually goes into the actual drip tip itself, the barrel of the drip tip, the metal. I mean, they're not touching. There's like space between the plastic and the metal on this tip. It's actually a really interesting design. And there's no heat that I get off this drip tip at all. Even when it's turned up to 200 watts. Nothing. I don't get any heat on this drip tip, and I love that. That I like. But it's metal. I don't like the feel of metal on my lips. It's not a very thick metal. It's a very thin metal, so it adds to the discomfort. I don't like it. And I would be so happy if I could put one of my own drip tips on here. Like if I could put a friction fit tip in here, like a Third Eye or my Mink Machine tip or something like that, I'd be really happy, but I can't. It's just the proprietary connection, and that's it. Anyway, let's move on. We're going to take a look at the base section now. The base section, there's not a whole lot going on at the bottom, just some certifications really. You've got a nice contact point in there for the coil head. I've seen larger, I've seen smaller. This one's fine, better than most, just as good as any. Now I will say the tolerances on this airflow, they're a little bit tight, a little bit of getting used to there, but I actually really like it. The knurling is very comfortable to use. Once you get it set the way you want, you know, it's not going to go anywhere, and you can turn it very easily, relatively easily. And of course, the coil head, if you've ever used a sub tank before, I'm sure you know the coil head screws on in there just like this. And you want to make sure that you saturate this coil really, really well when you put it in there for the first time use, okay? Really well. the top portion of the tank and the bottom portion of the tank secure the glass together with using the coil as sort of like their meeting point. Basically, the top portion screws into the coil at the top. The bottom portion, of course, the base, you screw the coil into it. And it connects the glass together just like that. You won't have any leaking as long as you make it good and tight. If it's a little loosey-goosey, you're going to end up having some leaking in there. So make sure it's good and tight when you tighten it down together. It does get stuck in the top piece at times. Like if you when you go to unscrew the tank, try to open it on up, if you're trying to change out the coil can get stuck in the top portion when it's screwed together like this, but it does a great job of securing the glass and enables you to fully disassemble the tank. Now, filling this tank is super, super easy. I love the way that this tank fills, okay? Never had a problem filling it. The fill holes are beefy. They're really, really beefy fill holes. You can use a dripper bottle in here, no problem. I hate when a company makes a top fill tank and gives me some piddly top fill holes, okay? If you're going to make a top fill tank, make me glad that you made a top fill tank. Don't make me wish for a bottom fill tank so I can fill them with, my dripper bottles. I want to be able to use a dripper bottle in here, and this does a great job. I mean, it is super roomy in here. You can use pretty much any dripper bottle, and you're not going to run into an issue filling this thing. If you notice, there's no mess here filling this thing. I mean, those fill holes are so big that they'll accommodate any dripper and it won't make a mess everywhere. There's no cleanup, basically. So I don't even have to worry about having to have a paper towel handy when I'm filling this thing. I mean, the fill holes are just so roomy. It works just so well filling this. Quartz glass tank here, it has a 5 milliliter capacity, so it'll accommodate a good amount of juice. Of course, these coils, I mean, they're going to eat the juice. And if you notice, that coil, it's really, really tall in this tank. I mean, I'm thinking that this is a really long coil in here, honestly. I haven't taken the coil apart yet. I've been using it about 2 weeks now on the same coil. Haven't had to change it or anything like that. I'll update you guys once I've gotten through that first coil, let you know how long it lasted for me. But so far so good working on this same coil for the past couple of weeks now. I've been really pleased with its performance. I haven't had any issues. I mean, if I leave it for a day or two and come back to it, it's still performing really well. Sometimes I've noticed certain sub-tanks, if you let them sit alone for a while, their performance kind of suffers. Not so much with this one. Not at all, really. You can lay it down for a day or two, come back to it, and it still performs just as well as it did, when you set it down. And there's also very low flavor creep. I was able to put one juice in here, vape it all the way down, put another juice in here after the first couple hits. There's no more flavor creep. Now, what concerns me about the coil at times, I mean, I haven't had any issue with any dry hits. let me say that again, I've gotten zero dry hits on this tank. Zero. Vaping it at 200 watts. Chain vaping at 200 watts, and the juice flow keeps up no problem. Yes, it's that good. It's just that good. Now, what amazes me about that is the coil. If you remember from our close-up on the coil a little while ago, that coil goes all the way up to the top of this thing. All the way up to the top of this tank pretty much. The portion that you can see anyway. Pretty close to the top. Now that juice, once you've vaped it about, it's maybe 20% worth of the tank, less, parts of that coil are exposed. They're no longer wicking along with the rest of the coil. But honestly, I can vape this thing pretty much down to empty and not get any dry hits, which kind of amazes me. Kind of amazes me. I remember some sub tanks I've used in the past, It was basically, you know, the empty point was more like halfway. That's when you want to fill it. I can tell you with this one, I haven't felt that way. I've been able to vape it pretty much almost empty before I felt the need to fill this, where I noticed a drop off in flavor, or I noticed that the vapor was not as saturated as I was, you know, experiencing before. At that point, you know, I go ahead and fill it. But at the point where I get there is basically when this thing is vaped almost down to nothing. I'm impressed. All right, guys, so that was an up-close look at the Coral Tank by ZPAL. We're gonna go screw the top collar lid back into place, pop that drip tip on in, and I'll see you guys topside. We'll vape on it, we'll talk about it. So the Coral Tank by ZPAL, right, yeah. It can handle 200 watts. 200 watts. That's amazing. For a sub-tank, I mean, it'll eat juice, don't get me wrong. And it's more power than anyone needs in a sub-tank. But the fact that it's able to do that is what amazes me about it, honestly. The fact that I can vape this at 200 watts, chain vape it, and not get a dry hit. And I think the magic is in the coil, for sure. The magic is in the coil. And I don't like the drip tip. I've said that before. I don't like this drip tip. I don't like that it's metal. I don't like that it has this silly little airflow control on it. I really wish I could put my own drip tips in here. But that being said, drip tip doesn't get hot. It doesn't get hot at all. It's amazing. 200 watts. I've got the best juice ever in here. This might be my new favorite juice of all time. This is Earl. Okay, this is Earl. This is an Earl Grey tea. It's like a spicy, delicious Earl Grey tea. And it tastes exactly like it should. It's perfection is what it is. It's maybe my new favorite vape ever. Yes, this is just a 120 ml bottle. Yes, I've only had this for like maybe 2-3 weeks, something like that. And I need a new one. Okay, picked it up at Modern Vapor Company. It's a local shop here. They also have a website, modernvaporcompany.com. Awesome shop. $60. No, $65 for a 120 ml bottle. It may be the best juice ever. And the flavor, awesome. The heat, awesome. It's excellent in this sub-tank. And I don't fucking like sub-tanks. I don't like them at all. I haven't found one that I've really, really wanted to vape again and again and again. But I keep going back to this tank. Even now, I've had this tank about 3 weeks now. The up-close portion was filmed a little bit earlier. But I keep going back to this tank. I really enjoy it. I really do. I like the heat that I get on this tank. The flavor is excellent. The heat is excellent. I mean, the clouds are ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. Clouds are absurd. Absurd. Absurd clouds. Absurd. But, I mean, clouds are one thing. I mean, it puts out plenty of vapor, don't get me wrong, but the fact that this thing can take the heat, I can pump this up to 200 watts, I can take a pull on it, and the heat is just ridiculously amazing. The flavor is great too, don't get me wrong, but the heat is what I really, really like. That capability of getting that 200 watts of power, it's a great hit. It really, really is. I don't think I've built a dripper yet that can handle 200 watts of power. I usually don't pump my drippers up past maybe 120, thereabouts. That's about as high as I push my drippers. But I can push this tank to 200 watts and it can handle it. It's a quick hit. It's short. I'm not taking long pulls on this at 200 watts, but it has a range. It really works well all the way up to 200 watts. And even at just 50 watts, it works well. It's a 0.2 ohm coil. Ohms out at 0.23 on this. 50 watts, okay? It's a cooler vape, and at that point I want to close down the airflow quite a bit. Yeah, maybe thereabouts, something like that. I mean, when it's 200 watts, I've got it wide open, don't get me wrong, but 50 watts, we'll close it down a bit. It's still really nice. I mean, I don't get that heat that I really like, but it still puts out some decent flavor. It's a pretty good tank, I really gotta say. I mean, I'm not a tank fan at all. I don't like tanks. I like my drippers, but I like this tank. I really do. I really, really do. Yeah, it's really nice. I'm impressed. And that's a lot. That's saying something coming from me because I really don't like tanks. Sub-tanks, don't like them. So that's saying something coming from me. Go figure. Anyway, till next time, I'm your homeboy Josh. Vape on, vapors.